Hello again. Um, I wanted to. I have a video out. I had one. This is going to be the new one. Stambul 65, uh, Paiste cymbal, and I want to do a new video because the volume. I just couldn't get the volume right in that video. There was a lot of interference in the background, um, kind of thing, like a lot of wind, and it was annoying me. And I wasn't doing the cymbal justice. And so I'm going to do this again. And this video, it was all about a very, very famous, um, it's going to be a legendary cymbal called the Stambul 65. And I'll show it to you. Here it is. This is the Stambul 65 cymbal. Now, this is a very important cymbal. I'm going to show you, I'm going to bring you up to this cymbal. So I'm not going to start here, but I just want to show you this is where we're going. And the Stambul 65, you can see that little right there, right? I don't know if you can see that mark. Anyway, I'll get you there. So this is where we're going, and I'm going to show you why this is such a beautiful and important symbol in drum set history. So here we go. Um, In the beginning, I always mix that up. B20. For a long time, I was like M20, M20, but no, I don't know why I said M20. It's B20. Cymbal making. Since the beginning of time, as we know it, cymbal making started with an alloy called B20. And I mean, as far as we're concerned in modern world, I mean, cymbal making in ancient Egyptian times, 3,000 years ago, it was probably something else. But as far as our cultural tree is concerned, for cymbals, B20 is where cymbals started in Istanbul, Constantinople, Turkey. The alloy, the 20 comes from the fact that it's 20% tin and the rest is copper. So 80% copper, 20% tin. And that seems to be the starting point. I don't know why they decided that, but that's the starting point for a lot of cymbals. Notably the ancient ones, the old ones, the old school ones, vintage ones from Turkey, Constantinople, the Ks and everything. And so that's where the story technically starts for us. And I have unbelievably old, the real deal Ks, not after we started saying K. This is, and they're even signed right there. I won't even, you can see this. They're even signed by the K man himself. These ones, they have a huge print on them here. But they do say Zildjian, Constantinople, Kirkoy. Now, in my opinion, this is another big discussion. Technically, at the time, only Zildjian had the right to stamp Zildjian on the cymbal. So if you find one that says Zildjian, which means cymbalsmith, it is a K. But some people say, oh, Zildjian with the Kirkoy, it's a different K, and it's not really the Zildjian, blah, blah, blah. The point, it's the contradictory story, because if it's printed Zildjian on the cymbal, which this is, and Kirkoy, somewhere along the lines, well, the stories that maybe Zildjian's putting something. I don't know what they're doing. Anyway, this guy is supposed to be one of the guys at Istanbul really long time ago that educated Zildjian and Istanbul today on how to make cymbals. He was one of the first ones that kind of, I guess you could say, took pride in doing it and put a stamp in his name and everything on it. So these ones are unbelievable. They're, as I said in the previous video, they're loud, they're chunky and soft at the same time. And I was doing this, you could hear it. They just sound so great. Awesome in jazz settings, but most of the B20 cymbals of this period were for marching bands, outdoor funeral services, and festivals, and probably even spiritual events, you know. And so they have a very pronounced loud sound to them. B20 is a very, very heavy, serious, strong cymbal. And these ones are both lathed and hammered, and they don't even have. They're not even like, you can see. I don't know if you can. No, I guess you can't see. You can't. You can kind of see. They're not. They're so old. They're not even completely round. Like there's. You look at. I don't know. There you go. You can see it right there. It's a little off round. They're so awesome. I love them. But they're vintage Ks. They're the real deal K. They're not even vintage. They're before vintage. They're the real deal. And I saw them online, and I had I'm kind of compulsive with cymbals, and I said I have to have these. So I picked them up, and there you go. So this is now a lot of old cymbals started this way with this kind of alloy. M. I gotta keep saying M. B20. 80% copper, 20% tin. All right, this is the whole world was kind of like this. We're talking late 1900s, early 20th century. Okay. Now, along with this cymbal, there was another one that came about a little later, 1940s, maybe 30s, but certainly 50s, possibly 1940s. And this is called, I'm going to give you a hardcore one, it's called the NS12. And the NS12 is a cymbal that's made, they call them nickel silver cymbals, but they're actually made from zinc, some silver. I think the Stambuls, before the Stambul 65, they had a little bit of silver. But I could be wrong about that, but I think so. Because Stambuls without the 65 mark, they have a silvery look to them. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, but anyway. This is called an NS12 cymbal. And the NS12 cymbal, like I said, nickel silver cymbal, the 12 is 12. They took out the tin and they replaced it with zinc. And the 12 comes from the fact that it's 12% zinc, I guess, right? And 88% copper, if the number logic remains the same. So you have something that is obviously more silvery looking, shines beautifully. This is the old K look. This is the NS12 look. Now there's a lot of NS12 cymbals out there, and even today, and they can be very beautiful depending on how they're made. A lot of people will say, "Oh, those sound like your pots and pans," and yes, as I said in the previous video, yes, they do, but it really depends largely on how it's lathed and hammered. And if it's done correctly, they can be really, really, really beautiful, mysterious cymbals. I'm in love with them. They can have a very smoky, just wonderfully melancholic, smoky sound. It just makes you want to play. If I could say like gritty water, it's like put little pebbles in a bucket and put water in there and then move around this bucket with the pebbles in the water, and this is kind of what this cymbal sounds like. It has a kind of bubbly sound. If you play it too loudly, it never gets out of control. It just reaches its peak very quickly, um, unlike the B20s. Um, and the domes are always unbelievable. They always sound amazing. I've never seen an NS12 cymbal with the dome that just sounded crappy. They always sound amazing. But the lathing and the hammering is very important to make NS12 cymbals sound good. I have heard very bad ones, like I've heard very bad B20s. This one is a hardcore NS12 cymbal. It's a Zen cymbal. ZYN. I think you can see it right there. Anyway, incidentally, I showcase all of these cymbals, even more. I'm going to show you today, actually a ton more, on another thing called Paiste cymbal exposition, and you can hear all these and see all the marks and everything. So check that out. I'm just putting them up. I show you the mark and I play them. So I brought this cymbal up because at the time, absolutely when the 50s came along, maybe the 40s, you had these two going on. You had the K B20 alloy, and then you had the NS12 alloy. And this NS12 alloy, as I said in the previous video, it took you out of the marching band sound, and it got you into a smaller venue, because the NS12s, the B20s, sorry, they can sound very, very loud and overbearing in a small cafe. They're ridiculously too strong for small cafes, especially if you're playing the wrong stick, and especially if you don't know what you have. You can destroy a concert with a B20 inside a small cafe. It's really, I've seen it 1,000 times, and it didn't take me too long to figure out that this was not the appropriate cymbal in a small cafe to play, unless you really knew what you were doing. So these things came along, and where do you hear these cymbals? The Beatles. You hear these cymbals with the Beatles. You hear these cymbals with very important jazz albums. When you start playing them, you'll start to recognize what I'm talking about with the important jazz cymbals. Definitely Beatles. I think maybe some of, I don't know if The Who was playing them, Keith Moon. I don't think, by the time Led Zeppelin came along, they were doing B8s, which I'll get to. Yeah, you could hear them on old jazz albums, great jazz albums, and the Beatles, if you want to check them out. They record phenomenally. So anyway, you had these two. Then comes, they were going at it, before I show you that, I'm sorry. Here, this is another NS12 called a Dixie, made by Paiste. And this one is so interesting because the hammering is so close to what the Stambul 65 is, and a giant beat. It's so close. The way the hammering, it's like they were developing this hammering and the lathing process, very fine lathing with this hammering, dimples everywhere, but it's in an NS12 metal alloy. Unbelievable. And so here's another one. I just want to show you. This is like the hammering and the lathing to me is the predecessor of the giant beats that came along a little later. On this particular cymbal, not all Dixies have this same kind of hammering, which is a very interesting fact. Anyway, getting to the Stambul 65. So again, B20, NS12, and all of a sudden, Paiste, company in Germany and Switzerland, comes along and seriously changes the alloy composition. After like 100 years, they decide to up the amount of copper in a cymbal. And it gives you this, the famous Stambul 65. Unbelievable. History in the making. I don't know if they realized how important it would have affected everybody and music. You've heard this cymbal, I guess the alloy of the cymbal 1,000 times in most of the beautiful romantic songs you've ever heard of. This cymbal is present. It's a beautiful alloy to use in ballads and in rock, and I'll get to this. Stambul 65. So after like 100 years, they come out with this thing, which is it's called B8 in the industry. 92% copper. That's a lot of copper, and 8% tin. And you get this thing. It's this orangey. I don't know if you can see the orange, golden, beautiful cymbal. Now, if you look on this cymbal, the hammering is not as it's not the same as the Dixie that I showed you, like the predecessor for the giant beats. That kind of eraser all over the place hammering in uniform. This one, it does look like that, but the eraser, the stamp looks a little smaller. It looks like, instead of being a big bulky eraser head, it looks like a small Q-tip size hammer all over the place. And then they lathed it, and they just sound amazing. Now, what's so great about B8s? B8s, it took what was overbearing and half of the time inharmonious. The B20 sound that was kind of hit or miss, and it took the delicate sensibilities of the NS12 cymbal, and it figured itself in between the two. It was a great compromise between the two, and so you have a cymbal that is lovely to play light. It's beautiful to crash on. It has a wonderful classy sound to it. B8s, right? Not just the Stambul 65. This is the one that made it, but all happened. This is the beginning of that. But B8s in general, they all have wonderful domes like the NS12, and not the case with the B20s. They sound wonderful in large rides, size, in a small hi-hat size. I have some 2002s. That's the star, basically, of the B8 line. Paiste came out with 2002s and kind of put their stamp on the best sounding B8s ever made. These are 2002 vintage 2002 hi-hats, and you can see the copper in them. These are the black and just a black label 2002 vintage. I love these hats. These are the hats I use in my lessons. These things work with everything. They're unbelievable. Really, I'm sitting there playing them sometimes and just thinking in my head, these things are just amazing. They go with rock, funk, jazz. classical, country, ska, reggae, blues, rock and roll. They go with everything. They're amazing, and they record amazing. B8, right? B20s don't go with everything. B20s are really wonderful with the good ones, right? They're really wonderful in classic rock, rock and roll, pop, when they get to be hammered correctly, like the A customs of Zildjian, the Avitas serious ones that Vinnie Colaiuta worked on with Zildjian. Those ones are that's sting sound. That's the sting. That's the if you want to go into you want to hear quality B20, check out Sting in the 90s. You'll hear Vinnie Colaiuta playing those A customs. A's. And Zildjian is a huge B20 company. So is Sabian. A lot of companies are actually B20. Paiste is the one that really said B8s. And their top of the line cymbal, their mega star is the 2002. And you've heard 2002s everywhere. You've heard B8s actually. I almost want to say more than you've heard B20s, but who knows? Everything, a lot of music in the 80s has that B8 sound, lathed and then unlathed, hammered and unlathed. So you have, like, I'll just go through some names. You have Toto with Jeff Porcaro playing pasties, B8s. You have Police, Stuart Copeland playing Roods. Those are B8s. It's not the same hammering and it's unlathed B8s. Hair bands in the 80s. There's a lot of B8 stuff, Mr. Big, all that kind of a lot. You have Led Zeppelin. Obviously, I should have started there. Led Zeppelin's Giant Beats B8s. You hear the Stambul 65. You hear 505 sound, pasty stuff all over the place. B8s, and they just sound beautiful. They sound great close. They sound wonderful far away. They're the kind of cymbals that you only need one and you're mystified by them. You hit them and they just sound beautiful and you just want to do it again. You don't need 1,000 of them. You never get tired of that B8 thing. Only when it's underproduced. Sabian came out with their own B8 cymbal, and they literally just said B8s. This is our B8s, and that was, in my opinion, a little underproduced, but still very, very good, very B8, but not like the 2002s. I want to mention Van Halen was huge during that period, and when you look at Alex Van Halen's kit, you see just like a landscape of 2002s, which are B8s, classic stardom of B8 cymbal making all over the place. And what kind of sound does he have? Huge, wonderful, huge sound. Unconfusing, uncontradictory, very harmonious, straight in your face, very powerful, lovely sound. And that was Van Halen. Van Halen was huge. And if you were to, transplant, I'll take those B8s out and put B20s in, I don't know if Van Halen would have been the same. Anyway, cymbals are so important because the resonance, how they blend with vocals and guitar amps and everything else, and the drums themselves, it plays a large part in the vibe of the song. And Jeff Porcaro was playing pasties, and he's all over the place. He was playing with Cher, he was playing with Bob Skaggs, he was playing with I think I said that right. He was playing with everybody at that time, and so Michael Bolton, His list is, I mean, it's Madonna. So you're hearing Paiste all over the place. You don't even know it, and you're hearing B8s. Um, so this is all of that started the explosion of drumming in the 80s really was, I mean, put gas in a fire with the Stambul 65 B8 sound. It just was such a lovely, beautiful sound to play with everything. And since then, I remember as I was getting older, I was kind of getting sick of this B20 sound, and I love B20s. I have a like the best of B20 sound, Constantinople K Zildjian, right? This is a mammoth of a cymbal. It's 22, one of my first major cymbals I ever bought. Really, I've had Sabians and Istanbul cymbals and all kinds of cymbals, and this is probably one of the most expensive ones the first most expensive one I ever bought when I was in college to learn swing on, and this is just freaking amazing. But it's a B20 cymbal, so it can be overbearing at times. It can be gongy at times. It looks beautiful, right? And this is Zildjian really made their name by the hammering techniques, in my opinion. It's the hammering techniques that really catapulted Zildjian, and to this day keeps them in the industry. Because you don't have even close to the hammering techniques of Zildjian in other companies. Sabian tends to be more of a lathing process than a hammering process, but Zildjian is the one that really took off with this kind of approach, and this sounds amazing. I mean, this particular, when you get high class, high quality B20 sound, it is amazing, but it's not Toto sounding. It's not Madonna sounding. It's not in the pop world. This kind, you can some sting, but Vinny was playing A's and Avita cymbals and A's, and it's interesting. Now he's into Sabians and working on the 602s, right? I mean, not Sabians, Pasties and the 602s. I wonder what Zildjian thinks of that. But anyway, um, and one of the major players of Zildjian was Elvin Jones, right? And Elvin Jones is a major jazz guy, Coltrane, and he was the one that helped, I guess, the K rides come about. Zildjian is a classic jazz ride. Um, and a lot. I mean, it ended up being classic rock and rock in the 70s, and then, but in the late 60s, 70s, that's when B8 came out, and then it just went and and rock and hard rock and metal and all that stuff came out, and it just exploded. And you also had all of the romantic songs and all of the ballads, the phenomenal just John Bon Jovi ballads, just crazy. Aerosmith. I don't know if Aerosmith, if he was playing Pasties or not, but the vibe is still like a Pasty 2002 vibe. Um, just all of those wonderful hair bands that made beautiful songs. Um, explosion like crazy with these B8s. Um, and this one, the Stambul 65, is the beginning of that. And that's why this cymbal is legendary. This cymbal is the beginning of all that stuff. Lionel Richie, uh, all that romantic stuff where all the music just sounds smooth and just sails along beautifully, harmoniously. B8 stuff. Uh, I'm sorry to cut so much on the M20 thing, or freaking keep saying M20 on the B20. But it is. You'll see. I mean, you go try them. They're hit and miss, and you really got to know what you're doing if you're hammering B20. And and Zildjian does do a good job with it. I mean, obviously, I have a few of them. I love them, but once you get onto the B8 thing, I think you just in 2002s you just they're so reliable, and you hit them and you know what sound you're going to get, and you don't have to struggle with them. You can pay attention to how you're playing, um, uh, and once you get on that wagon, it's hard to let go because they just sound so amazing. Um, Now you have companies like that are doing their own versions, um, that are making them drier and trashier, and it's a different kind and weirder sounding. You know, it's all everything's becoming electrified, and the resonance is becoming next to nothing, and compressed and all that stuff. And but it's such a shame because these cymbals actually sound so really beautiful. I remember when I got this, I went to a lesson. I brought it to my lesson, and one of my students was playing a MSC cymbal or MCS cymbal, and he couldn't stand it. And he goes, "What is that cymbal? It sounds so beautiful. What is that? You got?" And I told him, and that's it. It turns you on. B8s typically turn you on to beautiful sound. Um, there are lower versions of 2002s, but I love them, and I typically play them all the time, um, called the 505. So obviously you have the copper look to them, but they're 505s, and they're freaking 505s. I love the rides. I go crazy over these because they're just, I'll just play them all day. This one is from Germany, and the other one that I got is from Switzerland. Okay, une minute, okay? D'accord. He wants some chocolate cake that I made. Actually, I made chocolate fudge and my kid wants one. They're really good. Okay, une minute, okay? Merci. I live in France and I speak French as well, so my little son, um, uh, he's a little French kid and I speak French to him. It's so beautiful. Anyway, this one is Swiss made 505, and I'm in love with this too. These two cymbals just like, so I have these, and I'm kind of afraid to play the Stambul 65 because I don't want to break it, because if I did that, it would break my heart. I do play it, but you got to be careful. So I play these 505s and these 2002s, and I'm just in heaven with that. So there you go. The Stambul 65 started this kind of explosion in beautiful music. Um, uh, Beautiful pop rock music. Um, Led Zeppelin being one of the major players, Police being one of the major players, and then Toto, and Jeff Porcaro playing PC, and so Jeff Porcaro's everywhere. Uh, you know, and hair bands. I mean, next time next time you check out those hair bands, headbangers ball kind of stuff, look at the cymbals are playing. You'll see this thing underneath the cymbals, 2002s, and there you go. The B20s typically are 70s rock, probably like Allman Brothers, Doobie Brothers, Eagles. It has that kind of 70s shimmer, um, uh, country shimmer. Paiste B8s have a classier presence. Um, I don't know. It's hard to say what I'd like more. Well, no, I mean I like the B8s, but 2002s, but uh, they good good B20 cymbals sound very good too. But they're just not as consistent as the B8s, in my opinion. Um, So there you go. I wanted to show you those. More videos soon. Here's another awesome one. I love 22s. I found a 404 22-inch ride, which is 505s, 404s. After the 505s, then you get 2002s. This one is freaking amazing, and I will play this one. It's so freaking beautiful. The stamp is just, it's not even, you don't even see the pasty ink. It's just a stamp right there. And it sounds amazing. It sounds amazing. And I love these big cymbals. And 2002s can typically be too thick for me. If I had money, I'd probably find the ones I like. But these 505s, 404s, the vintage 2002s, I love them. Anyway, there you go. I wanted to redo this video for you about talking to you about the Stambul 65. And that's it. Hope you enjoyed it. Here it is. You find one, get it, and please don't break it. They are priceless, a part of your history as a drummer. Stambul 65 changed everything. They'll change your life, as they did everybody's life in the 80s, whether you know it or not. More soon. Happy drumming, and thanks for checking out my videos. Ciao.